In 1969, I was home from college for the summer. A buddy of mine says, there's this band playing at the Quiet Night. It was a club in Chicago by Wrigley Field. And he says, this band is playing, and they do the Stones song, Little Red Rooster. We should go see them. And I said, really cool. Because at that time, you're growing up, you go to dances, you go to the prom, you want to hear bands doing the Stones songs, the Beatles songs, the Beach Boys songs, stuff you know. So I thought, great, they're doing the Stones song, outstanding. And I said, what's the name of the band? And he says, Howlin Wolf. I said, well, we like the Animals. Maybe they sound like the Animals. And we show up. There's maybe 20 people in the place. We pay our $1.50, I guess it was. 20 people in the place. We're underage. We're 18. We can't sit by the stage. They put us on the side behind a velvet rope. They know we're not going to be buying drinks. They don't want to deal with us. We're sitting there. There's 20 people in the place. There's 6 big round tables by the stage. Nobody's there. We can't sit there. The only one's there. One table had about 6 or 7 old black guys sitting there. I'm thinking, this must be the cleanup crew. These guys aren't here to see rock and roll. So then the announcer, Richard Harding, who owned the club, gets on the PA, and as I say, with all the enthusiasm of a guy giving you your carburetor estimate, says, ladies and gentlemen, the Howlin Wolf Band. And all but one of the guys at the table, they start to rise. And they've got on these little $2 short sleeve white Woolworth shirts, and I'm thinking, what is this? I'd seen Hullabaloo. I'd seen Shindig. I went to the Dick Clark Cavalcade of Stars and saw Gene Pitney and Dobie Gray and the Supremes. I knew what rock and roll people looked like. It wasn't this. And these guys get up there and they start playing stuff I'd never heard. It was kind of recognizable because it sounded like the Yardbirds or Cream with your finger on the LP as it's going around. But it was pretty cool. And a guy named Eddie Shaw was the band leader. And he played tenor sax. And he was the first guy I ever saw sing the blues. And he did a song called Stoop Down Baby, Let Your Daddy See. You got something down there and it's worrying the hell out of me. And I thought, this is for me. And he did a few songs, and then Eddie Shaw grabs the microphone and goes, ladies and gents, the Howlin' Wolf, the Howlin' Wolf, the Howlin' Wolf. And I'm thinking, well, what's going to happen now? And the last guy, he gets up. And he slowly moves to the stage, and he rises, and he rises. And he kept on rising, and I'm telling you, man, they say he was 6'2", they say he was 6'4". By the time the Howlin' Wolf stood on that stage, he looked 10 feet tall to me. And in my memory, every time I think of him, he gets taller and taller. And he did Little Red Rooster. And it sounded kind of like the Stones, but kind of like something that came from the jungle or somewhere I'd never been, probably would never go. And then he did a Backdoor Man. And I'm thinking, cool, he does Stone songs and Doors songs. And then he did Killin' Floor. I'm thinking, and he does Jimi Hendrix songs. And he did Sitting on Top of the World. He does Cream songs. I love this guy. And the songs were so cool. And he was probably 58 years old, I think, at the time I saw him. And he'd spent a lifetime cultivating this persona of a beast. Yeah, that's what he called himself, the Howlin' Wolf. And he stalked that stage, and he would run his finger up in the air, and you could see every move Mick Jagger ever got. And he changed my life. And we went home, and I did something I'd never done. I started looking at liner notes. I started looking at writer's credits. And what we discovered was all these songs that he was doing, he had done years before Jimi Hendrix and the Doors and Cream and the Stones. And then we started looking at more liner notes and more writer's credits. And the Allman Brothers' Trouble No More. That was done by a guy named Muddy Waters, who lived right there in Chicago. John Mayall and Eric Clapton doing All Your Love. That was an Otis Rush song. He lived right there in Chicago. And Spoonful, Cream was doing it. It was a Willie Dixon song. He lived right there in Chicago. We were like on the mother lode of American rock and roll. And we started going every weekend. And the first time I saw Howlin' Wolf, I brought a camera. It was a Polaroid Swinger. And I took a bunch of pictures. And if you remember the Polaroid Swinger, it was $19.95. And the pictures were little 2 by 3.5 inch pictures. And a week after you took them, they rolled themselves up like cigarettes. So that was the end of that. I couldn't keep, I wish I had them now. But went to see Muddy Waters a few weeks later at a place called Alice's. Alice's had great value for us for 2 reasons. Number one, there was no alcohol, so we didn't have to sit behind the rope. We could sit right up front. And number two, there was no drinking, so unlike most blues clubs, you had very little chance of being in the middle of a knife fight. But we'd get there at 7 o'clock. I wanted to be right up front. The room was this wide, no, not this wide, maybe 2/3 of the width of this room. And there were chairs lining up either wall. But I wasn't sitting that far away. I wanted to be right at the stage. The stage was maybe 2 feet high. I came with my buddy Abe, who took me to see Howlin Wolf, and our girlfriends, and we sat cross-legged on the floor. You could do that when you're 18. And that was 7 o'clock. By 8:30, people started coming in. By 9 o'clock, people had sat behind us. People had sat behind them. People had sat behind them. I had to go to the bathroom. You couldn't get out. So what am I going to do? I thought, use the band's bathroom. Here's the stage. Here's me. So I pull aside a few of these. You know, I get up. I weave my way through the amps and the wires and the drum kit. Pull aside a couple of these big, Indian blankets that they were using to cover the backstage area. And I walk backstage, go to the bathroom, and sitting there. The pictures in the book is Muddy Waters, a bottle of champagne, and his hands on his knees. And I say, hey man, can I use your John? He's going right on. So I used it, and I came out, and I'm thinking, well, this is Muddy Waters, man. This is Allman Brothers Trouble No More came out of this guy. I gotta say something. So I said, man, I really dig your music, blah, blah, blah. He had so much, power just sitting there. Because I knew who he was, my mother saw him, she wouldn't think he had power, she'd think he's here to do some work on a car or something. But to me, he was regal. And you could feel it. But he was very approachable. So every time we would go to these shows, and it was every weekend, Otis Rush, the Howlin Wolf, Mighty Joe Young, J.B. Hutto, I'd go talk to these guys. I go use their bathroom. I don't give a darn if there was nobody behind me. I'd go use their bathrooms and get to know these guys.